The answer is because I cared deeply about making a positive difference in helping the most vulnerable and supporting those who are most in need.
Do you know what happens when a future queen is reduced to tears by a single cruel remark? Not in private, not behind closed doors, but in front of the entire royal family. That is exactly what happened to Princess Catherine. And the person who made her cry, the queen consort herself. By the time you finish this video, you will understand exactly what Camilla said and why Prince William's reaction left the entire palace in complete shock. But before we go any further, let me ask you something. Should a stepmother ever have the right to humiliate the future queen in front of her own family? Or has Camilla finally crossed a line that can never be uncrossed? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this question has divided the royal family like never before. And hit subscribe to Royal Talks TV, because we bring you the stories the palace doesn't want you to hear. It was supposed to be a quiet family gathering. A private lunch at Windsor Castle, just the senior royals. No cameras, no press, no public scrutiny. Just a family trying to come together. But what started as a peaceful afternoon quickly turned into one of the most explosive royal confrontations in modern history. And at the center of it all, Princess Catherine. The future queen, the woman the public adores. The mother who fought cancer with dignity. And she was reduced to tears by a single, calculated remark. A remark that came from Queen Camilla. The lunch had been planned for weeks. King Charles had wanted to bring the family together, a rare moment of unity. Catherine had arrived looking radiant. She had been through so much over the past year. Her cancer diagnosis, her treatment, her quiet, dignified recovery. She had returned to public duties with grace, humility, and strength. And the public had embraced her more than ever. But inside those palace walls, not everyone was celebrating her return. Camilla had reportedly been watching Catherine's growing popularity with growing unease. The public's love for Catherine had only intensified. Every appearance she made was met with cheers. Every speech she gave was praised. And every step she took seemed to solidify her place as the monarchy's future. For Camilla, that was a problem. The lunch began with polite conversation. Charles sat at the head of the table, visibly tired but determined to keep the peace. William sat beside Catherine, his hand occasionally resting on hers. Anne was there too, quiet, watchful, observant. And Camilla sat across from Catherine, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. The tension in the room was palpable. Anyone who has spent time around the royal family knows that the atmosphere can shift in an instant. One wrong word, one careless remark, and everything can change. But nobody expected what happened next. It started with a simple question. Catherine had been discussing her early childhood foundation, the work she had poured her heart into. She spoke passionately about the importance of early years development, about how the first 5 years of a child's life shape everything that follows. She spoke with the conviction of someone who truly believes in what she does. And everyone in that room listened. Everyone except Camilla. When Catherine finished speaking, a brief silence followed. And then Camilla spoke. She said, "You've certainly made a name for yourself out there, haven't you? Though I suppose that's what comes from knowing how to play the part." The table went silent. Catherine's face flushed. She tried to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed her. William's expression hardened. And Anne set down her fork with a quiet, deliberate clink. But Camilla wasn't finished. She added, "It's just a shame that genuine royal service is about more than performing for the cameras." The words hung in the air like a blade. Catherine's composure broke. She excused herself from the table, her voice trembling slightly, and walked out of the room. William followed her immediately. He found her in a private corridor outside the dining hall. Her shoulders were shaking. She was trying to hold back tears. But they came anyway. Not because the words had been harsh, but because they had come from inside the family. William wrapped his arms around her and held her in silence. His jaw was tight. His eyes were fixed on the door behind him. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Everyone in that room understood the message. Camilla had just crossed a line that would not be forgotten, and William would not let it stand. Inside the dining room, the atmosphere had turned glacial. Charles looked pale. He had heard the words. He had seen the hurt in Catherine's eyes. And he knew in that moment that he would have to choose. But he also knew that choosing would mean wounding someone he loved. Anne broke the silence. She said, "I think we should take a moment to consider what was just said." Camilla waved her hand dismissively. "I was only being honest. The girl is hardly a seasoned royal." Anne's eyes narrowed. "You will not refer to the Princess of Wales as the girl." Camilla flinched. Anne had rarely, if ever, spoken to her like that. It was a warning, a line drawn. And Camilla understood that she had just made a dangerous enemy. When William and Catherine returned, the room had changed. The warmth was gone. Conversations were stilted. And Catherine's eyes were still red. William did not sit down immediately. Instead, he looked directly at Camilla and said, "That was unacceptable." Camilla started to respond, but Charles raised his hand. The king said, "This is not the time or place." William didn't back down. "Then when is the time? When my wife is pushed to her breaking point, or when my children are told their mother isn't good enough?" Camilla's face turned pale. No one in that room had ever seen William like this. He was controlled, he was measured, but there was fury behind his eyes. He looked at Charles and said, "If this is what she thinks of my wife, then what does she think of my children?" The question landed like a bomb, and nobody in that room had an answer. The lunch ended early. Charles retreated to his private study, exhausted. Camilla left without saying another word. And William stayed by Catherine's side for the rest of the evening. But the damage had been done. Word of the confrontation spread quickly through the palace. Within hours, whispers were circulating among staff. Within days, royal correspondents had picked up the story. And within a week, the public was asking the same question. What exactly did Camilla say to make Catherine cry? The palace refused to comment. But the silence only fueled speculation. Some believed it had been a simple misunderstanding. Others saw it as part of a long-running pattern of tension between the two women. And a growing number of observers believed that Camilla had finally gone too far. Because this wasn't just about Catherine. This was about the future queen. This was about the mother of the future king. And this was about the woman who had already endured more than anyone should ever have to endure. Catherine had faced cancer with bravery and grace. She had returned to public life with humility and strength. And she had never once complained. She had simply done her duty with dignity, with warmth, and with a commitment to service that had won the hearts of millions. And yet, despite all of that, she had been reduced to tears at a family lunch. By the woman who had once been the other woman. The woman who had spent years trying to rebuild her reputation. The woman who had finally, after decades, become queen consort. And now, according to those close to the family, she had just made a terrible mistake. But the story doesn't end there. Because William's fury had not subsided. He had spent the days following the lunch in a controlled state of anger. He had spoken to his father firmly about what had happened. He had made it clear that he would not tolerate any further attacks on his wife. And he had made it equally clear that the monarchy's future depended on Catherine, not Camilla. Camilla may hold the title of Queen Consort, but Catherine holds the public's trust, and that is something no title can ever buy. In the weeks that followed, subtle changes began to appear. Catherine's public engagements increased. Camilla's visibility decreased, and the palace quietly began to shift its focus. William had drawn a line, and it seemed that Charles, however reluctantly, had chosen a side. But the question that remains is this: will Camilla ever be able to repair the damage she has caused? Or has she finally crossed a line that can never be uncrossed? Now, let me take you back to the moment before everything fell apart. Because to truly understand what happened at that lunch, you need to understand the years of tension that led to it. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla has always been complicated. From the very beginning, they were seen as rivals. Catherine, young, beautiful, beloved. Camilla, older, experienced, determined to hold her ground. For years, they managed to coexist. They smiled for the cameras. They stood beside each other at events. But behind the scenes, the tension was always there. A quiet war of influence, a struggle for position, and a competition for the king's ear. In many ways, their rivalry was inevitable. Catherine represents the future. Camilla represents the past. And the monarchy, like all institutions, must eventually choose. But the public had already chosen. Catherine was the most popular member of the royal family. She was the one people trusted, the one they admired, the one they wanted to see as queen. And Camilla, despite all her efforts, could never escape the shadow of Diana. The comparison had haunted her for decades, and no matter how hard she tried, she could never truly step out of it. So when she made that remark at the family lunch, it wasn't just a careless comment. It was the expression of years of frustration, years of feeling overshadowed, years of watching Catherine rise while she faded. And she had finally let that frustration spill out. But she had chosen the wrong moment. And she had chosen the wrong woman. Because Catherine is not just another royal wife. She is the future of the monarchy. And William, for all his calm, is fiercely protective of her. He has never been afraid to stand up for his family. He has never been afraid to draw a line. And he has never been afraid to fight for the woman he loves. In the days following the lunch, William held a private meeting with his father. According to sources close to the palace, he made his position unmistakably clear. He told Charles that Catherine had earned the respect of the British people. She had earned it through years of service, through her grace under pressure, and through her courage in the face of illness. And he told him, in no uncertain terms, that he would not allow anyone to undermine her. Charles listened carefully. He knew that William was right. He also knew that Camilla had overstepped. But he also knew that supporting his son would mean wounding his wife. And that is a position no man wants to be in. But the decision was ultimately out of Charles's hands, because the public had already made its own decision. The moment the story broke, support for Catherine surged. Social media was flooded with messages of love and solidarity, and calls for Camilla to apologize grew louder. The palace tried to contain the damage, but it was too late. The story had already escaped, and the public had already chosen their side. Catherine, for her part, remained silent. She did not complain. She did not seek sympathy. She simply continued her work. She visited hospitals, met with families, and supported causes close to her heart. She did not allow the incident to define her. And in doing so, she won even more hearts. Because true grace is not about never being hurt. It's about how you handle the hurt. And Catherine handled it with quiet dignity. She showed the public exactly who she really is. And they loved her even more for it. Meanwhile, Camilla found herself increasingly isolated. Her allies within the palace began to distance themselves. Her public appearances were met with colder reactions, and her influence, once so carefully cultivated, began to erode. She had spent years building her position, and in one single moment, she had damaged it. But the question now is this: can she rebuild? Or has the damage been too great? In the weeks that followed, the palace issued a carefully worded statement. It did not mention the lunch, it did not name names, but it did say that the royal family was committed to unity and mutual respect. It was a weak attempt to draw a line under the incident, but everyone knew that the line had already been crossed, and no statement, however carefully crafted, could uncross it. So where does this leave us? The monarchy is a family business, and like all families, it has its tensions. But when those tensions spill out into the open, they can become dangerous. For the monarchy to survive, it must present a united front, and that requires all members to respect one another. But Camilla had broken that rule, and the consequences are still unfolding. Catherine has emerged from this incident stronger than ever. William has proven himself to be a devoted husband, and Camilla has been left to reflect on her actions. But the real question, the question that remains unanswered, is this: will the monarchy ever truly be able to move past this? Or will this moment forever haunt the family? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: the palace will never be quite the same. So now you know the truth behind that explosive family lunch. You know what Camilla said. You know how Catherine reacted. You know what William did. But what happens next involves someone we haven't even talked about yet. And that story might be even more surprising. If you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell for Royal Talks TV. Because stories like this don't stay buried for long. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Should Camilla be held accountable for her words, or should we move on? Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.